Thank you very much. May I come back to the last thing we have done also some investigations into dynamic prediction and use for collision avoidance and got some other results than you very strict said it's of no use. So the question I would like to ask and to discuss is what kind of tests has been performed regarding of coming to the result there's no use of.
Well, no use, maybe it's a very little use, was we found out. It's what like most common from ship captains was that when we are so close that we will see an avoidance maneuver on a dynamic predictor from another ship. When we're more worried about looking out the window, what's happening when looking on any screen. So
just this comparison between looking out of the window and having this prediction present in the effect is
yes,
subjective evaluation. Yeah, so it was a subjective evaluation, expert rating, like asking experienced mariners, so what is the situation, what do you feel, how do you like it also. This leads to the thing, to the evaluation, less used for collision avoidance.
Yes, that's correct. It was a professional opinion from so experienced ship masters.
Yeah, okay. And from, if I may, your presentation was about dynamic prediction, but the second part, from my point of view, was not much dynamic prediction in the sense that you use a hydrodynamic model for this thing. So when you compare usual situation from AIS data or usual behavior and detecting, oh, this is not according to what they usually do in this area. This was just poor evaluation. There's an algorithm which checks the course and speed is not according to the statistical broad variety that is in this area.
Yes, that's correct. It's not. That was not about dynamic predictor. It was an other study we're also doing in the ACCSEAS project. So just actually the two services.
And those are good questions. It's about how would something like that dynamic predictor be used and who would use it. I could see it being used by vessel traffic services, I could see it being used on the bridge. There's a whole bunch of coordination procedures that go with it. Who's going to pipe up and say, hey, that one's going off track, it needs to turn left? And what happens if it doesn't respond when you call it? And there's a whole raft of procedural issues that lie behind some of these tools, I think. Are there any more questions? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. I represent European shipmasters. I've been a shipmaster myself for many years. On the predicting, why are you predicting? I can give the answer myself to prevent accidents. Do you not make it extra complicated on the bridge that you have too much information? The man is looking out of the window. The pilot is looking out of the window. He sees whether it's going right or not. He has to go inside and check on the predictor whether it's going wrong or not. Then he has to go out and check it again. Don't you make it extra complicated? I see the goal of the whole system, and I think maybe it's advisable, but I see a lot of problems that you make the work on the bridge extra complicated. And we, as mariners, would like to keep the work on the bridge as simple as possible. If we know our job, then we know whether it's going wrong or not. Thank you very much.
Yes, you have a good point. We have experience of the dynamic predictors on some vessels, and we are very happy with it. I can say the master of Stena Germanica find it very useful, and we're actually having him a lot maneuvering to port. On the Stena's high-speed ferries, where people don't sit so badly, they don't see the ship side good, so they have almost needed to maneuver to board. But I can see your point that most captains know a ship well, and they do in their head just as good predictions most of the time. But it is a tool to help. If you don't want to use it, you don't need to use it, of course. If you find it helpful, you can use it. If you don't find it helpful, you don't look at the screen or turn it off.
Yes, I want to make a comment on that again. If you have too much information, also when the information is coming from ashore, from the VTS operator, it's making it extra complicated. I can give an example on the accident on Costa Concordia, in which I'm very much involved. The real reason for the accident was the fact that the management of the bridge did not form one line. There were different opinions from all sides, and there came orders to the helmsman from different sides. That's something we're going to have again if we have this system. We need a simple system, and I think the system to prevent accidents is already in place. Thank you.
Well, it's very interesting practical feedback there, which we should take account of, the simplicity of operation of these sorts of systems. John and Murray.
Thank you. I'd just like to sort of feed on from the last question, really, and support that area of concern. Originally, and it should still be the case, that e-navigation, one of the underlying principles was that it should not be technology-driven, but it should be user-need-driven. What I think would be very useful is if in these projects that we see is almost a pro forma of linking it to the user need that it's addressing, and even whether it's the, I don't know, maybe noted it, the RCO or the solution or whatever, wherever we are, because there are some projects that you think, where's that come from? You know, it might be very interesting, it might be a nice technical exercise, but the direct applicability in some cases, and I know not all e-navigation is on the ship, but the direct applicability to navigation is sometimes difficult to see. And the point about not making things too complicated on the ship, the idea was that we were supposed to relieve the unnecessary work burden. Not that people on the bridge of a ship should have nothing to do, but the inappropriate burden should be lifted to allow navigators to focus on the job of navigating. And I think if we could clearly see the link to the user needs, the RCOs and the solutions in some of the projects, it would make that clearer. Thank you.
Who on the panel wants to have a go answering that? Mads?
Thomas? Yes, not digging into the exact service here, I think that the comments are very valid. Some of the services we're working on is, for instance, exchange of vessels' routes, and definitely there is a situation where you do not want that information all the time, because then all you can see is just a black screen with the vessels' routes all over the place. So we are working on bringing intelligence into that, so that if you have vessels' routes crossing each other within certain thresholds, you have the system come out and say, okay, we're actually foreseeing that you'll have a close counter situation in the near future. And then it brings that information up, because e-navigation is about bringing the right information at the right time, and only that information. So that is very important, that we don't just come up with more information because we can, because that would make the system very unusable, but doing it in an intelligent way.
So these questions are being sparked by the dynamic predictor. What user need was addressed by the dynamic predictor? Did users say to you, we want this tool? Or is this, as was implied, technology being imposed on the user?
Well, We know that we have used actually wanting this predictor. It's not a predictor developed in the research project, it's a commercial product that we have sold. So we know that we have captains that really want it and have good use of it. And then we think maybe more people will know, have good use of it. For example, a pilot taking a ship into a port will maybe not know the ship very well and gets help with how the ship behaves, how it responds on the rudder and engine, how it responds on the wind. If you are a master captain of a ship, you probably know the ship quite well, but if you are a pilot boarding ship, maybe you don't know a ship very well. And you can see a need for some assistance on how the ship behaves.
Thomas?
Thank you. Well, let me dare challenge the U-ship-driven approach a little bit here. Because I believe someone had a recent conference, a presentation, where Henry Ford is saying that if I had asked what users wanted, they would have asked faster horses rather than cars. I think we need to experiment with what is possible and put it to the test. Make users test these things and see if it has a value for them. And if we don't do that, then we're clearly doing something wrong. We need to see if that has some value and discard these solutions if it doesn't. But we need to experiment with what is possible. And that is still, in the big picture, I believe, a user-driven approach, because it is driven by what the user needs, but he may not always know what he needs.
I think that's a very good response. I'm not ignoring people trying to ask questions, but these are clearly important issues arising around what the user wants. Now, Madge's boss, I'm going back to it in just a second. Madge's boss wants to know.
Yes, just a comment on this user business. I want to offer to you the possibility that the user is not only just to navigate on the bridge. There are other users involved in this, which might we need to take into consideration, such as a VTS operator, which has a predictor and is looking at the vessel going the wrong way. We actually had cases in Denmark where we were successful in, I think it was even a helicopter almost landing on the vessel before it went around, because we knew it was not contact.
We agree with our boss.
Just there was a question about this gentleman here, the other speaker, my friend. I think that is a really important point, because this is changing how business is done, which is my point around procedures. What you're actually saying is there are other users out there that we probably haven't thought about yet, but that's going to really cause an interface issue between, between the mariner and the shore authorities. Question about this, sir.
It's more a comment from our point of view, working closely with e-navigation for many years. We always end up with discussion, too much information for the navigator. What is too much information? Go back in the list of lights and look for a particular light. Going back and look for into the minimum keyboard display for AIS information. There is no requirement that there is a connection between the AIS and the ECDIS, and we do have accident in Norway where a pilot have outmaneuvered the whole bridge team by telling them that the minimum keyboard display to have an error, and all the navigator went to the minimum keyboard display and focused on that. I think it's about how to deliver the information based on what the navigator wants to have of information, not all information at the same time. It's a more clever, enhanced way to deliver the information to the navigator through which. And I'm a navigator by myself. For the last 15 years, I'm also head of the VTS authority, or VTS operator in Norway. On the shore side, we also need the same picture, the same information to be able to interact and regulate and make the fairways more safe. So it's all about using information that's out there in a more clever way, at the right time, presented in such a way that both the navigator and the VTS operator do understand the full picture. Thank you.
agree. And I think there's a question here around how the 9 different services, how they would interface with each other, how they've been tested together by the ACCSEAS project. Gentleman here. Oh, wait.
Jim from Crystal. Just getting some comments on the Mr. John Murray's comment. If I'm understood correctly, I think that there is a kind of how to organize to convince the ship owners or the users with our services. I think Mr. John Murray said that to convince our users, we need to focus on what is the origin of the service and what was the origin of the solutions. So I think we can find a very good example in the ILS guidelines for the testbed. The guideline explicitly requires that what is the user requirement, what was the solutions. So I think if we organize our even the presentation or when we provide some information on our service, if we add some that kind of sources explicitly, and we can make more conveniently or more in detail convince our users of our solutions. So I think Mr. John Murray pointed out that point.
Comment from the panel? Or second,
yeah. One of the reasons ACCSEAS involved at IALA is that we will be feeding back what we've been doing in the test bed, in particular the services, using the guidelines on reporting on test beds. So there will be at least a harmonised reporting of results and timing into user requirements. That's put down by IMO. But there is also, we also need to sort of recognise that this is a test bed, and that it gives us a little bit more scope to try things that may not be considered by users initially. And I think this is going back to the point that Thomas was saying earlier, that we have the opportunity to try things out, and maybe they don't work, and that's okay, that's a valid result. But sometimes you get that nugget of gold, and that's certainly worthwhile looking to pursue. But it's but going to the question of information and making it simple for the mariner, I think that's absolutely right. We certainly don't want to overload the mariner with information. That's not good. But producing something that's simple is incredibly complicated.
There is another issue here, and that is that the mariners making those calculations anyway, all the time, that ship is being manoeuvred to go alongside or around a bend or whatever it might be. The ship's team, the bridge team, is calculating roughly where that ship's going to be all the time. So what we're doing here, this is being done digitally to support, but all the time it's going through their brain, where am I going to be in the next few minutes? If it's not, we'll miss the point. Yuki, you have a question.
Thank you. I of course first of all support what Omar and Yonel said already, that the BTS is also playing an important part here. And I see maybe some of these services rather be there. And what interests me is that when we were working on reporting qualities directive to negotiate how it forms out, we made the question of could we actually remove some of that reporting? Do we really need to report so often to BTS stations and so on? And the answer that we received was that the BTS operators actually do want to hear that there is, want to hear what is happening on the ship. And this leads to my wondering that maybe these kind of prediction tools would help the BTS operator to know a bit better what is happening on the ship, and then this way avoiding that we need to do all the manual reporting. But that's just a thought that would, and I don't know if you have
Bas?
How I see this is that the dynamic predictors is everybody's is asking for other vessels' intentions, and the predictor could be seen as giving that information. Maybe it's not usable, as Oscar said, but it could be. And now we test it and see if it's working. Maybe not. Tomorrow, Thomas Corrado will tell you about the route exchange functionality, exchanging route, intended routes between vessels. That's another approach to intentions by vessels. So it's just that.
Is there anybody from VTS operations in here who wants to comment from a VTS perspective? Thank you.
Peter Baan from the Netherlands. Sorry, not so strictly VTS, although I have something to do with it. What I mentioned in the whole discussion is the fact that, first of all, the ACCSEAS project itself has chosen a number of potential services. Did it select all potential services? No, because given the time frame of 3 years, that's impossible to do. And secondly, there are other regions where other services are going to be tested, and hopefully we can take those experience on board as well. The second point is the comments from ACCSEAS and from the European Shipmaster Association. I can understand them, although it was clearly said several times in IMO, in EANA, and any other conference as well, that we want to have the information, the reliable and in-time information on board of the ship for the decision-making process of the mariner. And he himself should have the opportunity to use the information he needs at that moment under given circumstances. The third point is that what I don't hear here is the fact that the North Sea, that's what we are talking about, is under pressure. Safety and accessibility is under pressure, and the picture of the North Sea will change quite rapidly. That means that the maneuverable space is reducing also quite rapidly. That means that has an influence on ships' behavior. It's for the VTS authority, it's a big challenge. Also to change their VTS operators who normally have a direct interaction with one ship, to change the attitude of the VTS operator into a more monitoring function, because he is going to look at the whole picture. That are aspects which need information. For instance, the prediction thing, I can imagine that at the end it may have more value for the VTS side than for the ship side. But the usability of itself has to be proven at the end of the project. And that is something we forget a bit. We don't have the answers for the solutions yet. And we don't know yet whether there is acceptance of those services internationally or for the region. That will become later. It's the next step. Thank you.
Really good points.
I think, thank you, Peter, for your comment. So I think we can stop now about the dynamic prediction. So the comments are taken into account. So it is a user-driven approach chosen where we did investigations. So we did together with the man overboard maneuver prediction, where we put the potential user in the situation. You may have this kind of information, not exactly looking into the optimized human-machine interface yet, but just to get the information, is this useful in which kind of situation, under which kind of conditions, and the positive response is there. So we haven't tested that yet with VTS operators to a great demand, to a great extent, but from the point of view of a user on board, on the bridge, there is potential. So, and of course, it's a long way to find the optimized solution, how to present this information. So today we are talking about ACCSEAS. There are other guys, other researchers looking into enhanced head-up displays. Maybe there's an integration there in the future. We do not know yet. What we know is there is potential and there's benefit for all the users. And that's the point, and that's why we are going ahead. And what we can do is to bring the enthusiasm also to you, taking into account, of course, your concerns about over-information and overlay of information. This has to be a selective approach also. Okay.
Thank you. Those are good comments. I think there is an issue in here. My experience of working on bridges, my team were doing what these tools do. My team were predicting where the ship was going to be. The navigator was a manual ECDIS system that spent his entire life telling me where he thought he was about to be in 3 minutes' time. And predicting where the ship was going to be relative to the putty or relative to the jetty was really important to me, and we were constantly trying to work out where that was going to be. So anything where you can have a degree of confidence that you were getting something to corroborate where you thought you were going to be has got to be a good use. That's the common, that's just the sort of common sense of it. This thing will open up other users, and that brings in some real procedural, command-related issues around how do you manage all that, and that's something which I think we're not going to solve that this afternoon, but it's something we might question ourselves as we get towards Thursday about whether or not there's some thinking got to be done around there. Now, a lady here had a question.
Thank you. My name is Lieke Bachers from the Netherlands, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Environment. We're not going to talk about anymore about a dynamic predictor, I understood, but one compliment for the conference is running just in time, maybe because of the predictor, I don't know, but it's working here, so my compliments. Well, my question, or my comment was more on what we are doing here within ACCSEAS, also Mona Lisa or e-Maritime. I think I'm convinced we are doing the right things. It's very important for safety, etc. But I also know, I'm working since 1992 with the ministry, always in the information exchange, electronic information exchange between ship and shore. So I also know it's a very long-term development. So what I'm looking for is, what are the success factors? What does ACCSEAS need to be really successful? Well, the basis is that the services will run, that's the basis. But what are really the success factors? We mentioned a couple, like trust, commercial benefits, but maybe also the interaction between traffic management and transport management. So then we're talking about more users, also the logistic users. So I'm just thinking about what are the success factors, or with other words, what is maybe the killer app or the killer service or.
Thank you for moving away from the dynamic predictor. Alvin, I'm going to look at you as the project manager to ask that question for a project perspective, then we'll ask you what he thinks from the policy point of view.
Well, from a project point of view, we obviously pointed out we've got the solutions which we'll demonstrate later on in the year. But the real legacy also comes after the project, and part of that actually happens tomorrow afternoon as part of the forum, which is the e-navigation users forum. And that really is a place where all the users involved in e-navigation can come together and discuss these issues, particularly in the North Sea region, and look about what things need to be considered, what things need to be tested further, pushing forward e-navigation and its impact on accessibility in the region. And that's really where, that's really what we're trying to get at in the ACCSEAS project. The demonstrations show potential solutions, but also the real big test is actually beyond the project. So it's really getting people together, talking, discussing, making decisions, and trying to improve accessibility forward.
Which sort of answers the question, sort of doesn't. I think we should still feed some of the comments we're getting back this afternoon into how we shape the workshops tomorrow afternoon, so that that interaction can take place. You're from a policy perspective.
Thank you. Well, I think the question is very valid because we have been working a very long time on this topic, as you said. And I think we have three problems there. One is just simply that it's very complex area, very complex issues. There's a lot of regulations, a lot of, some are international, some are national, some are regional, and a lot of authorities involved on these things. So that makes it complex, it makes it difficult to manage and discuss it. I would say the second one is maybe the chicken and egg question of these things. That is that when we are talking about them, we say, okay, let's do e-maritime, it sounds wonderful. And here we have some examples, what we could say they are part of e-maritime. But then, of course, are they really, as somebody asked, are they really the right answers and are they really the way to go? My hierarchy, my top hierarchy will ask, okay, but what are you actually producing in that? And unless you are not producing something with that, then how do you convince that this is the right way to go? So define what you want to do, what are the tangible outputs, while trying to convince the political level that this is what we need to do. That's always a balancing act. You cannot really decide in advance of what you want to do, particularly on this field, which is developing so fast now. When we moved into electronic systems and so on, there's new things coming all the time, and if we try to control them by policy and by legislation, that doesn't really very easily work because it's coming often after, and we want the market to develop the sensible solutions. But on the other hand, how do we then be on right time to help them to develop? It's really, again, what do we present as tangible outputs on short time or medium time thing? I think that's one of the issues. And the third one is simple. That's a very human factor. It's a change management. We have been used to doing things very long time on one way. It has been working until now. Why should we change it? Often the electronic facilitation is seen as a tool to do the old ways, just a new way, but not really improving the processes itself. And we need to think of rather of that now when we have all these new ways, the information in our hands and the systems available and so on, could we actually disregard some of the old practices and regulations and so on and start doing them a better way? So it really needs also a thorough thinking. And I think that there was a question of are always these research projects relevant? I think it is a very good question, but of course we also find out are they relevant only after the market has adopted them. And if the market does not adopt them, then we know that they were not relevant. So we have to test them, we have to get the ideas, and it doesn't mean that if we do one project that we take everything that project as it is and make it as a legislation and decide everybody will start using it. It's rather that they develop and they give inputs to another projects and new projects and they form up, and at one point we realize, hey, this is actually the way where we want it to go, and then it will be adopted, and maybe then there will be a need for supporting something like that with IMO rules or regulations or more regional regulations. So I think that's the problem. That's a very complex arena where we work on.
Thank you, Thomas. You want to do a comment?
Thank you. Elaborating on the success outcome of the project, I think when we are testing these different kind of services, obviously getting a positive result of services being of value for mitigating risks and improving accessibility to the North Sea is a good result. Also figuring out what is not a good idea is an equally valid result. And I think also something which is very, very valuable and tangible results is that some of these services, like the Maritime Safety Information Notice for mariners here, we're not really in doubt is a good idea, because that is just very obviously something that needs to be done. And there we're developing the standards that will be used in the future systems that will handle this kind of information, trying to develop those standards which will bring us closer to have these services. And I think that is also a very, very important output of the project.
Can I ask, I really don't know the answer to this question. So do you envisage over the course of the next year some trial ships with users out there and a trial VTS service in a trials area? I know there's one off Rotterdam, there's one off Hull. And do you envisage them testing using all these services that you have created? Is that what we envisage over the course of the next 12 to 18 months?
So I would imagine we would be testing all those services in those particular areas, because some might not be relevant to those particular areas. But the principles of them will be tested not only in those areas on the ships, but also in simulators. Because in simulators we can just rerun the tests and gather information about how mariners do use the services, what impact does it have on how they perceive the information, and what that in turn changes their actions on board on a British ship. I think eventually, when navigation does take off, these services will be available in certain parts, and the mariner can call upon them as and when they feel it's appropriate.
Okay, so you envisage quite a rigorous testing regime for some of these services over the course of the next year or so, which will engage users?
Absolutely.
The users only.
Any more questions, please? Oh, loads of hands up. Oh, you gotta go. I'm going to get you that one.
Thank you, Jochen Kambier, Flensburg University of Applied Sciences. May I refer to the first two speakers? We heard a lot of other organizations, institutions, countries dealing with a similar issue as like ACCSEAS. So I was wondering, is there really a global player, for example, against this background, taking up all the issues and all the national initiatives around the choke points of the world, global player, to coordinate this? And if not, what does the EU intend to do?
Well, that's an easy one. Mark, guess who's answering that one?
Well, yes, the other is taking on that role to some extent. We have in our e-navigation committee, we have a working group which is looking at test beds and has prepared some recommendations on how test beds should be evaluated and how the results of those should be compared. So yes, we are working on that role now, and the test beds are led by an experienced navigator, if that helps, some of the ship owners and masters present. So yes, we're doing that at present. Now, it's just at the early stage. That working group has only recently completed its work on this guideline to evaluate the results of test beds in a harmonised manner. The work has been accepted by the IMO as part of the output from the strategic implementation plan, and they'll be meeting again next September to take it further. But I imagine that we'll be publishing the results of those probably on our e-navigation portal as well as in more formal documents.
Thanks, Mike. Edward, you had a question, I think? Lady just coming with the microphone.
Can I add something to?
Oh yeah, please do. Sorry, Matt, I think.
We have the enavigation.net portal as well, collecting information from different test beds. It's run by IALA, so it's a really good place to find information on different projects and outcomes. So just check it out.
Edward.
Edward Hoskin from the UK Hydrographic Office. All this discussion of test beds and the phrase user perception has been used quite a bit in testing with users. I really want to just turn that on its head and say, are there any actually hard facts in terms of baseline measurements which you can use to compare against with the new system? Now, whether that's on safety, whether it's on collision rates, whether it's on efficiency. And the reason I'm asking that is because whatever we do as a community of developers and ship users, navigators and ship owners and whatever, someone's got to pay for the solutions at some stage. And I'm sure those who hold the bags of money in terms of running ships are wanting to know, what does this actually mean in terms of ships not having accidents, or users being able to work more efficiently, or whatever. I mean, you got the gist of what I'm saying. So what are the baseline measurements? Are there any? Should there be any? And is ACCSEAS in any way comparing the new ways of working against some known baseline?
Any thoughts on that, please?
Sorry, Matt. Okay, Thomas.
Maybe I can answer some of that. My name is Thomas Korok from Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. I'm a human factors expert at the university, so I'm part of the ACCSEAS team, and we are doing the user evaluation on these things. So there are, of course, measurements that we're using. So the human-centered design paradigm that is now coming into the navigation domain is an iterative design where you do simple tools and you iterate them and test them on users. You test them, for instance, within my domain on mental workload, on time to get into the loop, for instance. You test them on what is called usability metrics. So, for instance, how many clicks does it take you to get to that particular thing in a radar screen that we're interested in? Because you might not have that time to do those many clicks. But at the end of the day, the real metrics is the number of accidents that we have. And we can see, although that there is a problem, in all that we do, technology-driven, user-driven innovation, we can see that we are, just as Captain Van Winkelen here said, that we are actually doing some sort of de-skilling of the man on the ship. So how many officers today can actually take down the sun and do a position by a sextant? Not very many today can do that. But on the other hand, we see that the accident rate of ships worldwide is dramatically dropping. So, for instance, in the 1600s, in the UK alone, there was 300 total losses every year. And today we have less than 100 total losses in the worldwide fleet, which is many times what was the fleet of the 1600s. So I think that it's important that we do measures. What we try to do is do a baseline simulation with normal systems, sort of. So, for instance, when it comes to some of the things that were presented here, we will do a baseline simulation in a simulator, in a complex environment, with many ships, with precisely the type of technology we have today, and then we will do another simulation with the new technology, and we will compare if it's better or worse, with some quantitative measurements, and also with qualitative measurements, asking the mariners, is this something that you would accept? Is this something that you would use on the original ship?
Thomas, so how do you envisage demonstrating that to an audience like this? So you will actually tell them, these are the stats, these are the baselines we're working against, this is what we found. Is that how you plan on doing it?
Well, of course, the best would be to bring you all into a simulator to show you how this actually works, and that's not particularly practical and feasible. But for instance, Mats told you about the vessel's coordinations tools. There is a short video that we took at an earlier stage where we have it's a regular exercise, it's a search and rescue drill. We have the video of the message for the coordinates that are sent to the rescue vessel coming in. We can see the radio operator writing down these 10 numbers for those two coordinates, sending the slip forward to the bridge. You can see the navigation officer taking the slip, rewriting the numbers to make sure that he is actually seeing the right numbers, and then starting to click on the active screen to try and understand how to bring that search area into the active screen. And Mats mentioned it took actually 14 minutes. Of course, that's just one sample. We could redo it and redo it, and there will be many mariners that could do it much faster. But it's an example of how we can actually demonstrate it. And then at the same time, in a computer that was standing on the back bridge, the same time as the radio operator started to read up the coordinates, the search area was already there. There was no risk of misunderstanding. You're saving some amount of time that would be valuable. So I think that's, I mean, if we can demonstrate it that way, I think it's a good thing.
Hey, does that answer the question?
So I could have just nodded and said yes, but I just wanted to follow up slightly. Yes, it answers the question that there are baselines that you're measuring. I'm not sure it answers the question as to whether it's a convincing enough argument for people to invest in new systems. We heard earlier that the bridge of a ship is perhaps only refreshed every 15 years. If we had sufficient facts and figures, would it encourage a ship owner, shipping company, whoever, or the mariners even, to argue the case that they should have a new ship, a bridge system in 2 years' time, because actually it is cost effective and safer and better?
There is a conservatism in the domain, and maybe that is good. I'm sure that there are many sort of good ideas that are nice to have, but not necessary to have, that needs to be filtered out through the conservatism of the office. But I do think that if an idea is really good, it will persuade, and it will survive, and it will become. So, for instance, bringing us back to the dynamic predictor, I think that it was actually a user need, because the officers of Christiana Karisma mentioned sitting in that little wheelhouse at the middle of the ship, those of you who know big high-speed vessels, with only cameras as bridge rigs. And with a very complex and complicated propulsion system of water jets, had great difficulties in actually bringing the ship alongside. So it was a user need, and I think if it is valuable, it has come to stay.
Thanks, Thomas. I'm now going to put my neck on a very personal block here, because I find it. Anybody here think they'll be using the same laptop and operating system in 15 years' time? 10 years' time? 5 years' time? I find it hard to believe, I'm still understanding how ship owners are prepared to operate one system for 15 years with no upgrades, when in some cases they're moving more than the GDP of some small nations around the world in one platform. I find that remarkable. So I think we will find that technology is going to drive change in these sorts of behaviours, and actually, hopefully, it won't be too expensive, although that's probably a very big hope. So you have a question?
Thank you, Thomas, for bringing back dynamic prediction. Yeah. I have a question on it's a short question, yeah, because Thomas, the big Thomas, told that the standard is very important thing. Maybe you have focused on the standard in data format, especially for the MSI. But I think, gentlemen, you have pointed out the standard in the measurement metrics to convince the stakeholders. So I'd like to suggest the standard in the implementation. So I think for the dynamic prediction, one of my colleagues in my institute is also developing a Korean prediction model for the VTS system. So if we have some standard in layers and the boundaries of implementation, I think we can just place it and test it, and we can compare the result from the tests. So we can select the better one, and we can also combine those models to generate a better solution, better prediction result. So I think if there's any boundaries in the implementation to be considered in replacing or the substitute with other models, I think in that case we can make more diversity of implementations in dynamic predictions. So my question is that you have shown that just only one all in one. So how can we replace your core model with this standard implementation technology?
Well, practice also thinking about, of course, it's a very good idea to have some standards, especially if you should, like we will test now, exchange forces from tugboats. And of course, you need a standard for tugboat forces exchange. But for the internal signals, I think it's up to each developer, industry, to choose what signals they want to use for their predictions, because you can do predictors in many different ways. You can use hydrodynamic models, you can use some kind of self-learning algorithms that learns how ship behaves, you can use dead reckoning with multiple accelerations maybe. There's many different ways to predict the future precision, and I cannot say one is better than another, but that depends on the ship probably and how it behaves. But if you should use taking external forces from tugs or from mooring lines or whatever, then it needs to be a standard for these forces, of course.
I would be giving you the microphone if I knew you asked a dynamic predictive question. Matt, please.
Just a quick follow-up on Edward's question on the measuring of the value of different services. We have had some talks with the Be Aware project, which is a follow-up on the risk project, evaluating the risk of oil spills in the North Sea region. They had some different risk control options, and there was some really tangible ones, making a VTS area in the entire North Sea region. They also had one risk control option saying e-navigation, and they asked us how to handle that risk control option of e-navigation. What is it? What should we calculate? What is the implications of these different services? So there is a demand for things being measurable, but there's still some problems with the measuring of these new things. It's really hard to get a hold of. So just there's other people that are working on this and trying to figure it out.
So that'll be one of the challenges of the next year or so's work. Matt, can I change the subject slightly and just talk about the MSI service? Because I was very interested in that. And you said that this was a service which obviously is going to be more accurate and the information can come up more readily in front of the mariner, and the mariner has a chance to respond and say, yes, I'm not it, in some way or form. Have you thought about using it for the mariner to provide information in the opposite direction? Not necessarily about the inside and the past that. So I'm thinking, for example, of H-steps, where a mariner sees a feature that's either not reflected on the chart or it's different. Have you thought about using it in that way?
Yes, we have discussed that. This is the first step. Yeah.
And is that being discussed with UKHO as the area I?
It hasn't come that far. No.
Sorry. Because one of the great concerns I had as UK national hydrographer in a previous role was the fact that we were seeing, everyone correct me if I get this wrong, we were seeing a drop-off in the number of H notes that were coming through. We were never quite sure why that was. It may just be that ship teams were not educated on the need for them, that sort of thing. But it's that ability for the mariner to feed back quickly and simply and accurately information that then be incorporated into products and services. And but not if I've got that roughly right with me. Thank you. Okay, so you are thinking about that.
Yeah, we discussed. We had today. They often they reported via ECS centers or other means. We tried it in DMA on the web page, but there's a demand that you receive that in the other. There must be a person in the other receiving this information and bringing it up on to a navigational warning or something like that. So, but there's still some issues in that. So yeah.
So there's a big implication for resource and coordination and all the rest of it. And,
yeah.
And we won't just be changing the lives of mariners at sea, we'll be changing the lives of mariners operating VTS services. Thomas?
Yeah, and the infrastructure, the new infrastructure that we will be using to promulgate this information would definitely make it much easier to implement such a functionality on top of it.
Thank you. So, you have a question?
Coming back on the navigation warnings, which is a very important point. I would think maybe ACCSEAS could approach a system whereby the ship which has not received the information would get and not given confirmation that they received it, would be given a kind of alarm. Whether that could be built into the system. Because I think it's a very valuable point that the ship is exactly informed about what is happening at the immediate time that a danger occurs, like a shipwreck or something. If it hasn't been warned in time and the ship is nearby, there is no confirmation the ship received it. Would the system be possible?
Vance, did you understand that question? Did you get that?
Maybe you can.
The gentleman was saying basically it's the issue of if a ship is close by to an incident or an event or something that's warranted a notice to mariners, how do you know that they've got it? Will the system enable give them a warning somewhere they can respond and say, yes, I've got this?
But there are actually two elements of this. There's the physical acknowledge that the message has gotten to the vessel intact, so that the system has received it. That is one thing, and the system gets the acknowledgement of the message. That's on the technological level. On the user level, there's that you can acknowledge that you've seen and understood the notification, and that can also be sent back to the authority that the vessel has actually acknowledged the information. So that's both on the technological level, the proof that it has been transmitted, and there's on the user level, acknowledging that they've seen the message.
My question is, if the system doesn't work, as you just really know, is it possible to warn the ship? That was my question. Because a lot of people on board ships are very busy. And they might miss the message, there is no radio officer anymore. So one man has to do a lot of work. And it's possible that they miss some information. So should it be possible to have a warning then? That was my question.
So presuming the system brings up an alarm or something that says, wait, off the watch, wake up, this one's important.
Yeah, that is definitely possible. In the system we have there's some filtering in the prototype display, EPD. And if an incident is within 2 nautical miles of your planned route, then you will get a notification saying that things has changed and that you need to check that. So there's some functionality doing that. We also discussed a lot, maybe we can take that in the workshop tomorrow, we discussed a lot about the, today in the NAVTEX system, for example, there are vital messages, there are important messages and so on. They have some different, when they're promulgated, there's some priority, and I would like to discuss that tomorrow if we need to build that into the system again. If you have all the information on your chart, is it then necessary to have priorities and so on too?
That's good feedback.
If the ship is running at 20 knots, then 2 nautical miles is a very short distance.
I think these are good observations. They're obviously warm to the idea of this MSI system is obviously service is an attractive service, and there's some clear workshop discussions to be had there. Owen, do you want to comment while I listen to the back?
Very quickly, I think there is a way that we can capture it technologically, but my question would be why did that mariner miss the message in the first place? And that's really the question should be answered. And we don't know yet.
I think we'll just park that one. It's obviously a key point. We'll pick it up in the workshop tomorrow. So you had a question?
Okay, my name is André Wallace from Office Institute for Information Technology in Northern Germany. We had a lot about the good ideas we had with these tools and the new information technology-based tools. And my question is about certification. Is there any effort planned in the project or even in partner projects where you think of development processes for the development of these systems and making these systems dependable? So this would be an effort that has to be done.
When do you want to pick that one up? It's the question around standards, resilience, and quality controlling.
We, in the project, we'll be trying to use the S100 standards, so for data exchange, for example. But we are not looking at IEC standards and so on. That's beyond the scope of the project. We're here to really test out potential solutions to try things out, see how the environment feels. Yes, there is a certification issue, software quality assurance issues that we do need to think about, but that's really beyond the project. In this test bed, we're really just trying to understand what works and what doesn't. There is a standardization issue, but that's a little bit further down the road.
Okay, thank you. Okay, there's a lady here, a question.
I not really had a question, but I had a remark, because talking about the MSI information exchange, on one hand we are talking about technical solutions, but the most important part is that the messages are understood in the right way, as Thomas said, and that the vessels are behaving in a way responding to the message is sent. So we can't solve all the problems in the technology with the techniques, but we have also to look at the behavior of the vessels and to get an acknowledgement or still we need voice that the message is understood in the right way. And that we can't solve with technology only.
This is a really key area. We're not going to crack it this afternoon. It's all about, we're starting to broaden the stakeholder base. We're starting to broaden the number of users who are involved. And I could say to you, well, if you said to me 20 years ago as commanding officership, you wanted a response from me that I'd received a notice of mariners, I'd say, why? I'm in charge of my ship. I know what I'm doing. And this is the change that's taking place. And in very, very complex seaways, it may well be that the authority running that seaway wants that confirmation. And that's going to change how the mariner does business. But it's also going to increase everybody's workload. Can you imagine if we're all going to start responding to the fact we've got this MSI?
But that's not what I meant.
Oh,
on
sorry.
one hand, we can respond by voice to the VTS center, but on the other hand, there is a VTS center who's looking at the behavior of the vessels. And we can see if the vessels are responding on the message given, yes or no. So it's not always, you don't need always voice, but you can also have a look at the behavior of the vessels on your radar screen or something like that.
Yeah. So sort of automatic response, or an interpretive response. Comments from the panel?
I didn't quite hear Carol.
Okay, so the neighbour is saying that you don't necessarily have to have a voice response. You could have the fact that the message had gone to the mariner, and because the mariner responded in a particular way, the vessel operated in a particular way, you would then be able to interpret the fact that the message had been received. I'm a bit worried that we're back to dynamic prediction. It's actually not dynamic prediction. Well, I suppose it will be slightly, yeah. Okay, I'm going to park that one. Dynamic prediction.
I think that the idea by having some kind of feedback or that the MSI have been received and understood is good. 200 miles, 20 knots, that's 6 minutes. everybody knows that in this audience. By 6 minutes start to communicate, yes, I have understood it. It's not enough time. And it's not enough time to go back and look into the now text either. So I think that this first step, by providing MSI as a pop-up on the screen along the route, is a good idea. But keep in mind that there is no requirements for this connection between the AIS and the ACCSEAS yet. So we assume that only 50% of the vessels out there is able actually to have this pop-up on the screen. The idea to find out, we know the route, we have the AIS information, we know who is sailing along the route, and what is the MC in the front of the vessel. I think the idea should be looked more into how we can make sure that all the vessels along the route is actually receiving the MSI.
Excellent, good feedback. Mats?
The primary way of promulgating the MSI and wouldn't, I don't imagine it would be AIS. I think we look at to the maritime cloud as it is now and use any available network to communicate this information to the vessels for presentation on the ACCSEAS or for now on the ship EPD, the prototype. On the vessel, if we talk acknowledgement again, that there is a button where the mariner can go in and push acknowledge that he has read that message. It don't have to be in voice or anything else. It's all automatic or electronic. So.
Thank you very much, Steve. Right, I'll take one last question at the back before rounding up a couple of issues. Thank you.
Anders Berger, the Swedish Maritime Administration. Two things. First of all, I'll address Andrew's question whether any projects or parallel projects are addressing the question of security. And we are doing that in Maldives and the affiliate to we are looking briefly at that when we are looking into these kind of questions of kind of internet security or that kind of question. Even though I don't have any more knowledge specifically about it. So this is not my area of competence. So yes, we are, and I know we will be in the next phase of this as well. With regard to acknowledgement and not acknowledgement for MSI and those things, why are we so concerned about acknowledging things? Today, when we are saying get it on enough text, we get it on a paper notices to mariner, no one is asking us to acknowledge that early on board. So why should we suddenly, just because we get it presented on a display in front of us, suddenly have to acknowledge that we received it? So far we never had to do it. Should we suddenly have to do it just because we make the information more available to the mariner? I think it's stupid.
So a really interesting point, basically, on back to this business of understanding the implications for operating procedures and communications between ship and shore, which I'm sure will be discussed again tomorrow. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close, draw the panel discussion to close. And you may have noticed that you've all got these green widgets in front of you. This is where you're about to give, I'm not sure if it's dynamic prediction, MSI, or just general feedback. But I'm going to ask Alwyn to explain the logic behind these high-level questions that we're going to ask, and then we're going to have a go at it. So what's the purpose of these asking these questions?
The purpose of this is to gather feedback from yourself. So we've got 4 questions. The first one is really just a test question, but we're also just to gather more information about who's here really. So you should have a remote control in front of you. So green one, and I can't see one stuff. Okay. So you have a question, and then in this particular case you have 8 answers. So you press the letter according to how you want to answer that particular question, then while this query goes to the back and calculates the results, and we get the results up on board. So we can perhaps have a quick discussion about what comes out. So, who from the following list do you represent? So just press A to H, however you feel you should answer that.
What happens if you press twice?
You're allowed to press once, and there's 90 recipients, so we're not doing too badly, we've got 50 so far.
53, is that everyone? So everyone? We're almost there.
There we go.
Okay, I think we'll anybody left? We've got no pause. Okay. So many of us demonstrations. Interesting. We have no pause. Okay, so the majority of our administrators. Okay, well that was just a test to see if we go for the next question. So what has the biggest influence on the implementation of e-navigation? The political support, user acceptance, technical advances, commercial opportunities, environmental benefits, or other?
I reckon I know what the answer to this one is.
User acceptance is quite high there.
Commercial opportunities. Isn't that brilliant? So that just really depicts the problem. The user acceptance on the one side and the commercial opportunity on the other. Very interesting.
Okay. So next question. What do you see as the main benefit of e-navigation? Increased safety, environmental protection, operational efficiency, ease of use, improve end user experience, interoperability, compatibility, access to ports, or other. Okay. Wow. What was so C and A?
So it's increased safety and operational efficiency.
Operational efficiency is obviously very important. Interesting. Access to the
Thank you. The question you raised was rather general, the main benefit of e-navigation. But if you probably would say now what will be the main benefit of e-navigation for the NSR, then you may have a different thing, because then the access to ports will definitely increase.
Yeah, so I'm kind of surprised at the result we had there, actually.
Okay, this is the first time we've done this, isn't it?
It is.
Process. That's useful feedback, and perhaps we'll feed that in this next question tomorrow, and there are other questions for tomorrow as well. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to draw this to a close now on time. Thank you very much indeed for participating this afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for all your questions and observations, which the team have gathered and will feed back into the system. And thank you also to our speakers, from our keynote speaker all the way down to our panel members for their efforts this afternoon. So that's day one complete.